Welcome to Talking Legal with Templars. My name is Dayo Okusami. I'm a partner at the firm. My colleague with me today, Victor Sameria, is an associate in our finance department. And today we're talking cross-border payments across Africa and PAPSS. Victor, PAPSS or PAPSS was launched last week. What is that about?
Well, PAPSS is essentially the Pan-African Payment Settlement Scheme introduced to facilitate payments across Africa.
And what was the African Import-Export Bank's role in this, Afrexim?
Afrexim is one of the promoters of the scheme, and to be honest, they've played a very key role in accelerating the launch of PAPSS. For example, we're already aware that as part of the infrastructure, Afrexim has deployed about $500 million to facilitate settlements within PAPSS.
Now, PAPSS, as you've described it, is it competition or is it complementary to current payment service providers?
So for starters, the idea is for PAPSS to be complementary and to accelerate payments, cross-border payments essentially within Africa. But at the same time, as you may be aware, settlement banks and correspondent banks make a lot of money from facilitating payments on a cross-border basis. So with the introduction of PAPSS, those fees are going to be reduced. Essentially, if PAPSS is successfully or rightly implemented, the idea is that correspondent banks will have limited role to play in facilitating inter-Africa trade.
It's actually not competition, but could be complementary for the growth of the FinTech and payment services space in Nigeria and beyond. Okay, so that's interesting. So what the takeaway from this is that PAPSS, which has been launched by the Afrexim, the African Import-Export Bank, will actually spur growth within the financial services system in Nigeria and beyond?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in your opinion, from a legal perspective, because you mentioned that currently now the microfinance banks, as they are licensed in Nigeria, can't trade in Forex, right? Are there any regulatory issues we should be aware of for the integration of PAPSS with local banks, both in Nigeria and beyond?
Okay, well, the CBN, for starters,
the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Yes, Central Bank of Nigeria introduced a framework for banks to participate, at least for the pilot phase of the PAPSS launch. And as part of that pilot phase, a number of African countries participated, and which led to the official launch of PAPSS. Now, one thing is certain, as of today, there are no mandatory rules for banks to be onboarded to the PAPSS platform. But the idea is that at least people are advocating that central banks across Africa should set out mandatory rules for banks to be onboarded to the PAPSS platform to accelerate integration. Okay,
so what we're expecting is the Central Bank of Nigeria will either adopt those guidelines for the pilot phase on a permanent basis and or issue guidelines and or a framework to enable Nigerian banks to be able to participate in PAPSS. PAPSS could be competition for the larger settlement correspondent banks, but could be complementary to the smaller payment system service providers and microfinance banks, which in all could lead to an expansion to the payment services space, both in Nigeria and beyond, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Victor, thank you very much for your time on this and your expertise. This looks like a space we'll continue to watch. Thank you very much.